Hi everyone, I'm going to be going through the to-do list project, just walking through one step at a time. We are going to be creating our own to-do list, just as if you were going to write down items and things you want to do and then take them off the list as you complete them. We're going to be able to create our own to-do list using Python's Tkinter module. So awesome stuff. These are some topics we're going to talk about. In a separate video, I will talk about the JSON module. But we're also going to be talking about fault tolerance, talking about parallel and distributed computing. And then also, we're going to be doing at the very end, creating our project. And we'll walk through all of that once we get there. All right. So first, these are some topics and things I want to talk about. I'm just going to go ahead and copy them. And I've already opened up an idle project, a project in idle. And I called it example and I put today's date and time. All right. So if I go ahead and just paste these things in here, let's say I just put them in a block string here. This is just really to comment it out or just make a list of things I want to talk about. And I'll talk about the Listbox widget. And then we'll go on to talk about the insert method and then what an anchor is. Just three things. So the first thing, this Listbox widget. What is a Listbox widget? Well, we've already talked about some widgets extensively. We've talked about buttons and labels and entries, and we've talked about frames and windows. These are all things that can go on, components that can go on a window. So imagine in past projects that we've created buttons and labels and entries. We're now going to talk about a widget called the Listbox. And just as the name says, it's pretty much a box that can hold a list of items. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and import Tkinter. So from Tkinter, import all. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my main window, and I'll say root is equal to TK. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and add a loop that keeps the window open. So root.main loop. So whenever you see the word root, just think that's my main window that I'm dealing with that I created. And if I were to run this just as is, right, you see it's just a window. All right, pretty easy stuff right there. We've talked about that in the past. So, we've created buttons. Like if I wanted to create a button, I could say like button 1 and then create my button, and it's going to go in the root, and the text for it can just be, I don't know, I'll say example. Okay, and then once I create that button, I got to put it up on the screen. So I'm just going to say button1.pack. Pack's just a way of putting it up on the screen. And then if I run it, my button shows up. And I haven't added any functionality to my button. I haven't added any command to it. So I click it, but it really doesn't do anything. All right, the same way that we were able to create a button, we're going to actually be creating a list box. So I'm going to take that button out. We're going to use the same type of procedure. Now I'll leave that button in there for now. All right, so we're going to create a list box. And I'm just going to call it L for list box, right? And yeah, I'll say list items. How about that? List items. And just like how I would create a new button from the button class, right here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Listbox class. And I'm going to put it in the root. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete my button. I just want to keep that there as an example. And then I'll say list items. maybe I'll just make it one word, right? List items. And I'll pack it in there. And then I'll run it. And let's see what shows up. Okay, so you can't see it, but I actually have a list box in here. See, I clicked it and it popped and it like highlighted it, right? This is a list box. I don't have any items in my list box. And that's the next step, adding items to my list. All right, so we have our list box we've created. How do we insert items to it? Well, I'm actually going to create an entry, and my entry is going to be where the user types in items to add. So I'll call this to add, and then I'll just say to add, and I'll just say entry like that. And there's my entry. My entry is going to go into the root, and then I'm going to pack it in there. So I'll say to add entry. So if I run it, I have an entry down here. All right, and now that I have my entry, I'm also going to create a button in here. I'll say add button, add BTN. And I'll just create my button, and the button's going to go in the root. And the text for it, I'm just going to say add item. All right, so I've done that, and now I'm going to go ahead and pack that button in there and run it, and let's see what we got. All right, so here's what we have so far. And just to discuss, if you don't know where we're at and you're kind of confused, let me just backtrack here. So anything that you type in, right? I don't know, an item to my to-do list. Let's say pick up daughter. I'll say pick up Vivian from school. Make this a little bigger here, right? Pick up Vivian. How's that? All right, when I click add item, what I want it to do is I want to add the item to my list, into my list box. Now, also, when I click add item, that's going to be a function that runs. So when I click add item, I want to add whatever the text is in here to my list, and I want to delete whatever was already in that box. So that way I can quickly add another item rather than backspacing it. All right, so we know the function is going to come when I click the add item button. So what I want to do is I want to add a command. Here's my light. Got to raise my hand to move around my office. And my command, I'll say my command is going to be called add item. And I'm going to go ahead and define that function. I'll say define add item. So when I click that button, what do I want it to do? All right, so I want it to insert. So I'll say list items, which is my list box right here. I'm going to insert using the insert method. The first thing that you type in is where you want to insert it, right? So you can add it at the beginning or the end. I'm going to add mine at the end of my list, because normally when you write a list, you write it one at a time going down. All right, so I'm going to add mine at the end. That's where I'm going to add it. And then what do I want to add? Well, I want to add whatever the user typed in here, right? So I'm going to use the get method. So I'll say to add entry and use the .get method. What that does is that gets whatever the user typed in here and will then insert it at the end of the current list. So the location always goes first, the where, and then the what goes afterwards. So that's what we want to happen. Let's go ahead and let's run this and let's see what happens. All right, so I'll say pick up that's my daughter. Add item, and it adds it to my list, right? Then if I want to add another item, let's say enter grades, and I click add item, it adds that to my list. And I can click on each individual item in my list. Now, the other thing that I mentioned is I want to clear out whatever was in the entry every time I click add item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say list items. I want to say in the entry that I created, the to add entry, I'm going to delete everything from the very first character. It says first to last, right? So I'm going to delete the first letter. Remember, the index is always from 0 and all the way to the end. So I'm deleting every character that's in that entry. So if I run it right now, you'll be able to see it. And I don't know, let's say to do coach softball. I add the item and I'll say make dinner. And I'll say do laundry. And then I can click certain items in there and they highlight. Okay. Now when I click each item, this is called an anchor. Like the anchor is on make dinner. Now the anchor is on do laundry. Now the anchor is on coach softball. So what I want to do is I want to also create a second button that allows me to delete things from my to-do list. So let's go ahead and do that. Add a second button. So I'll call this delete button. And that's just going to be a button. It's going to be in the root and the text is going to be delete. I'll just say delete, right? And then this one right here, I'll take away item. I'll say delete. And the command, we'll call this command delete item. All right, and I haven't created that function yet, so I'll go ahead and create a new function called delete item. And what do I want this function to do? Well, I want it to take a look at the anchor, okay? I want to delete whatever is in the anchor position. So if I say list items dot delete and I type in all caps the anchor, okay, that deletes whatever I have selected in the list, whatever's blue right there. So let me also pack my button. I'll say delete. Oh, delete button. Yeah, delete button dot pack. All right, so let's run this. I'll go through and I'll walk through and explain it afterwards. All right, so items to add. Let's say visit my grandma. That's something I gotta do. Add to my to-do list. And then I will clean out my car. That's always a good one. I add it. Notice how everything that's in here disappears. And let's add something else to my list. Let's say back up. I always have a ton of pictures and videos on there, and it's always clogging up all the storage on my phone. All right, so these are things on my to-do list. And let's say I make this list. I'm like, all right, these are the 3 things that I want to do today. So I go and I visit my grandma. Now I click on the item. If I click delete, it then deletes that item. So notice the anchor is wherever I have it highlighted. So I don't know if I want to add another item in there and I say play soccer. because that's important to do. And then maybe I want to, I don't know, make lunch. And let's say I decide to play soccer. I skip everything. I'm like, all right, I'm going to play soccer. And I do that. And I want to delete it. I highlight it. You can highlight it easily by just clicking on it. And then click on delete. And then deletes it from your list. So pretty cool stuff there. Just walking back through, let me explain everything that I did. So I created my Listbox, which is right here. I created my entry, which is right here. And I created two buttons. One button, the add button, has the function add item. And what that does is allows the user to type anything they want in here. And when they type in something and this button is clicked, then it's going to add that item that I clicked to my list. And it's going to go to the entry and get whatever I typed in. Then after it's got the entry item and added it to my list, it then will go back to this entry, whatever was typed in there, and delete anything that's in there, so that way I can easily type the next item in. I also have a delete button that allows me to highlight and select things in my list and then click delete, and that function is delete item that goes to my list and deletes wherever the anchor is. And the anchor is just the item that I have selected. That's called an anchor. I put all those widgets in my project or in my window by adding pack, the pack method. And it was that easy, right? So there's lots of things you could change about your list. I encourage you to add more to it. But really what I just went through right here, this was your project. So it says, using Python's Tkinter module, create a to-do list that includes the following widgets. Now in here I have a list box, I have an entry, I have an add button and delete button. That's what I just did. And then I said I will be flexible in accepting a variety of different project ideas. Add on to this, please, please, please. I'll just copy the code and submit it. Now this is the basics, like the bare bones, but there's a lot of things that could still go wrong in my project, or there are ways to make it your own, to make the screen bigger, to change the title, to change the color. These are all things that I am going to let you explore and determine if you want to add them. Be creative. I always add be creative in there. You're encouraged to add on to this project beyond this project specifications. And once you're done, take screenshots. The project walkthrough, it says coming soon. Well, that's because this will be posted here in a few minutes once I post it online. Do I need to use Tkinter? Yes, you do need to use Tkinter. Make sure you watch this video, follow all the steps, watch this video. It says watch the video, packets, routing, and reliability. I did not make that video, but I highly encourage you to click on it and watch it. It is a code.org video. All right, so with that, like I said, I'll create a separate video about the JSON module. This is all about fault tolerance and parallel and distributed computing, right? Make sure to take a look through this. I will be talking about this more extensively in class. So this is your project. If you have any questions, let me know.